Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. The Russians have continued to attack and push the front towards west, pushing forward, and it seems like the Ukrainians are trying to do the same thing. Now, who is succeeding? The articles that I read, and I read the ones provided by the Ukrainians. Why? Because you want to see how they perceive the war. I don't have the other side. And believe me, I don't believe them. I don't believe anybody until I verify. And since these articles that are provided by the Ukrainian and American mass media are skewed on one direction, it's easy to see cracks and you catch lies and exaggeration. So basically that's why I'm making this, to show how we are fooled, not only in this matter. This is an example that we can expose the mass media, but if they do this in this situation, they do the same thing in other situations when it's something else that maybe we don't follow. But what I'm trying to say is these guys are dishonest, basically, technically, realistically. So let's talk about the Russian forces. The Ukrainians are claiming, the Ukrainian military is claiming that the Russians do not and the British intelligence services also, and these experts. I made a video with an Israeli military expert. I agreed with certain things that he said. Not that I'm expert, he's the expert, but it doesn't mean that he owns logic and we can't use logic and verification. So they say that the Russians are incapable of attacking or counterattacking or conducting an offensive. But their own articles provide us with bits of information that if we just connect the dots, we get the answer, which is that's not true. They are still doing what they're doing, but they are hiding it from us, I think, because the articles I'm reading is the Russians are doing this, Russians are doing this, Russians are pushing here, the Russians we repel them here, we stop them here. If you stop something, that means that was coming towards you, right? So you have to read into their little weasel, semantics and figure out what's going on. So this is from Ukrainska Pravda from August 5, 2022. And this is the title: Russian forces trying to advance on two fronts, General Staff report. Now, on two fronts, I had other article saying on four fronts. That tells me that the Russians are not really, impotent yet. They didn't go limp all of a sudden. They still can do certain things on two fronts. About a month ago, it was an article, I didn't make a video on that, but I will refer to it, where they said that the Russians are incapable of fighting more than one axis. And then you find, no, they actually have 3-4 fronts open. And you look on the map and it's like north, middle, and south. If you have 3 or 4, I had no one with 4 fronts. But a month ago, they're incapable. They're done. They're toast. Just one axis. That's all they can do. And then you find, right, a month after that report, somehow the Russian forces trying to advance on two fronts. Two fronts. All right, so let's see what's going on here. The Russian forces are mounting offensives on the Bakhmut and Avdiivka fronts and are attempting to establish control over more territory on the western outskirts of the city of Donetsk. That means they are advancing and then try to, right, but they say it here, they're attempting to establish control. That's a euphemism for something else, right? Over more territory of the western outskirts of the city of Donetsk, which is already controlled by the Russians. The source is General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Quote, and I'm quoting, right? On the Donetsk front, the enemy is conducting assault operations. On the Bakhmut and Avdiivka fronts, the enemy is attempting to create favorable conditions to seize Soledar and Bakhmut and establish control over more territory on the western outskirts of the city of Donetsk. You know, western outskirts, that means towards Kiev, right? So that's advancement. If it was the eastern, that would be back. I have to make this clear here. Not because you wouldn't understand, but I want to emphasize it. The Russian forces shelled military and civilian infrastructure near, and it gives us a few, Yakovlivka, Kodema, Pokrovske, Rozdolivka, Vershina, Bakhmut, and Soledar. On the Bakhmut front, they conducted offensive and assault operations in order to improve their tactical positions, but they were unsuccessful. But who's having the initiative here? Ukrainians or these guys? Unsuccessful. What they're gonna say? Yes, and they rolled over us. They're gonna say that? No, and I don't blame them. The Russians will do the same thing, and I'm pretty sure they do already. So, on the Avdiivka front, Russian troops fired artillery and tank guns on the areas in the vicinity of Pishki, Prekishtivka, Shevchenko, that was easy, from Taras Shevchenko, their national poet. Beautiful poems. Well, some relatives introduced me to Taras Shevchenko. Volodymyrivka, Nevelske, Netailove. This is just so you, if you want to look on the map, you see what these guys, or look over the article. They conducted assault operations in the area. Fighting continues. Okay, so nothing happens. On the Kramatorsk front, the Russian forces fired on the areas in and around Siversk, Mykolaivka, and so on. So, and then the Russian shelled areas, they shelled the areas near Bohordymychen, Vazav. So they're, again, on the Kharkiv front, the Russian forces use artillery of various calibers to fire on areas in around Kharkiv, Boroshchova, Russian occupying forces did not undertake active combat operations on the Novopavlivka and Zaporozhye fronts. Russia's main effort on the Pivdeny Bug front are focused on preventing the Ukrainian forces from advancing. Now it seems like here they're fighting back. So the Ukrainians are in the offensive. Russian forces continue to actively use UAVs to conduct aerial reconnaissance in the area. The Russians shelled the area in and around the towns and villages of Mykolaiv and so on. So in addition, they launched missiles on the infrastructure target near the town of Mykolaivka in Odessa Oblast, that's in the south. So on the Siveshnya front, the Russian forces used tubed and rocket artillery to shell civilian infrastructure in around Zalizny Mist, and there's a lot of, it says in Chernohiv Oblast and Sumy Oblast. So you see just how many fronts there are in action over there. It's not like it's over and the Russians are just incapable of doing anything. How many fronts I just mentioned, how many areas, then this is reported by the Ukrainians. Now if the Ukrainians wanted to show that the Russians are toast and they can't do anything, they would not report this. They would say, they just fired 3 missiles here and they killed 50,000 people, almost 50,000 children. That's what they're gonna do. But they don't want to do that. They still say this. So that's active war over there, and this is reported by the Ukrainians. Obviously, probably the Russians are just missing all the targets and killing only civilians, as it's been reported for the past 5 months or so. Thank you very much. That's just informative video with these guys because they all lie, and I don't want to get into, oh yeah, they are doing over there, they are advancing over there. I don't know. I don't want to lie. So thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.